Good morning, everybody. I'm Michael Porter of Muddy Boots Code. And today I'm talking to Nathan Smith, a senior data scientist at Lovevery, which I believe is a company that prepares packages of toys and things for children, kind of like of all ages. It's maybe kind of like a Blue Apron for children. Is that kind of accurate?
That's a pretty good description, yeah, for children from birth to age 3 right now.
Okay, that's great. And so you're a data scientist at Lovevery. How long have you been over there now?
I started at Lovevery in August, and before that I worked at PRA Health Sciences in the pharmaceutical research industry, so it's been definitely a change of industry, but being able to apply a lot of the same data science kinds of thinkings to two different industries has been really interesting.
Okay, great. And you and I met each other through the whole Neo4j ecosystem. I think that's one of the cool things about the Neo4j community is that it really is kind of worldwide. And um, before I got off into the land of software development and data fun, I never really would have believed that kind of community like existed and then became true. And it's one of the things that like I think Neo4j has done really well is bringing people together, and and now we're part of the graph, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think Neo4j has excelled. I mean, there's a lot of software companies that aspire to that kind of a community, but I think Neo4j has really done a good job of delivering a place where you can get to know people, and it's very supportive.
Absolutely. So I guess I've got a few questions I'd like to ask you about being a data scientist, and that's kind of a over the last couple of years, it's been kind of like a buzzword, right? Who's a data scientist? What's a data scientist? You hear, different terms: data scientist, data engineer, these kinds of things like that. And I was just going to ask you, like, what do you believe the difference between like a data scientist and a data engineer is?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, and you're absolutely right that the term data scientist means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And so um, I think you usually have some follow-up questions about what kind of data science somebody's doing when they tell you that they're a data scientist. Um, to my thinking, um, the data engineer and the data scientist are both people who are solving problems with data. They're just maybe solving slightly different problems. So the data engineer is someone who is helping bring together data from all of the different systems that are part of an enterprise so that the enterprise can get that view of their entire operation. It's become increasingly complicated as we're picking up a lot of data from different types of microservices from different cloud vendors and different types of platforms. Maybe you've got all this great information out there, but it's in a third-party silo from somebody who you've contracted with on the cloud. And so the data engineer has that really crucial role of being able to um, bring together all of that data from different systems using sometimes different formats or different types of structured and unstructured data, and present that back to the business in a way that they can get that comprehensive view of their operations. And so really the kinds of questions that the data engineer is trying to answer is often what is happening in my business. Um, Whereas the data scientist is sometimes interested in the what is happening questions, but they're more often interested in trying to answer the what's going to happen next or why kind of questions. And so um, for the data scientist, often it's a matter of trying to reduce the uncertainty for the business. They're faced with a lot of potential outcomes that might happen, and the data scientist is trying to help them weigh what is the most likely thing, what are the risks that they need to hedge against, and how much do they need to hedge. Um, the data scientist sometimes is also involved in trying to automate processes that can be streamlined and automated to take some of the more um, routine and not very interesting work um, off of people's plates and automate it so that they can focus on the more valuable parts of their jobs. So, and really a data scientist and a data engineer overlap to some extent, and they have to be able to work very closely together. In a larger organization, the data engineer's job is going to be to prepare data sets to give to the data scientist, and the data scientist is going to um, create an algorithm, run the data through the algorithm, and then it's going to have some kind of output that needs to go back into the data ecosystem. And so then there might be another handoff back to the data engineer to put that output where it needs to go.
Okay. So kind of to sum that up, broadly would be like your data engineer's job is to collect the data, clean it, enhance it, get it ready for use by a data scientist. And then your data scientist gets that data, tells a story with it, extracts what they're looking for from it, and then like I said, and where those jobs overlap and what they do are kind of the pieces that are shared and like to make each other's jobs easier.
Absolutely. That's right. I mean, I think that overlap is going to vary from organization to organization, depending on the skill sets of the people who are involved in the size of the organization.
Absolutely. It's one of those things where, you talk to, I've talked to people here for like who work for like Deloitte or whatever and stuff, and they've got entire sections of people who were data engineers, and entire sections of people who were data scientists, and that's their job is they're there to find out things, they're there to consult. In different size of organizations, you may be wearing both hats at the same time.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's right.
Now, you how did you find your way into the career of data scientist? Because your background is musical.
Yeah.
You enjoy all of that kind of stuff like that, and through that, how did you evolve into a data scientist?
Oh, that's a great story. So, um, as an undergraduate, I studied piano and math. I did a double degree because I just liked them both. I didn't go into college thinking really clearly about what job I was going to do when I got out. I just kind of took what I liked, and it's worked out. So I'm very fortunate in that way. And then I went on to graduate school in piano, and I was kind of headed towards a path I thought of maybe teaching piano at the college level, but that didn't really work out for me as I was making a living as a working musician, playing gigs and teaching lessons and things. I also still really enjoyed the math side, and was ready to kind of settle down and not have the uncertainty of making a living as a musician. And so I went back to community college and learned about computer science, and that reinforced the math information that I had from earlier in my education. And then my first job in IT was working for a city government, which was a wonderful place for me. It didn't pay super great, but I had a lot of flexibility to work with open source tools. And the job that they set me on was to set up a business intelligence platform. It was when business intelligence was kind of a new buzzword. And so did a lot of reporting and data aggregation for the police department, the public works, fire department. It was a lot of fun data sets to work with. And so I knew I liked data. Once I got into that job, I knew I liked data. And that's kind of been a continuous thread through my career. And so then as data science kind of became a thing, there was a graduate program at Rockhurst University here in Kansas City that had a certificate in data science at the time. Since then, they've expanded it into a full master's degree. And that allowed me to build up my skills in data science. And then at the same time, I was working as my job title was ETL engineer. So it probably would be called data engineer now. So I was working very closely with the data. And then as I built up my skills with the algorithms and data science tools, I was able to transfer over from the data engineering team to become a data scientist.
Okay, well it's not necessarily like a super straightforward path, but once you got in the groove, it just kind of worked its way out that way.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one thing that's interesting about data scientists is, now there are graduate programs in data science, but they're only very, very recent. And a lot of the people that I know who are in data science didn't necessarily come up planning to be a data scientist. They at my old job, one of the people was a French major, one of them was an architect. Um, and so they came from really a lot of diverse backgrounds into data science, but kind of that analytical thinking is kind of a common thread across the various people that I know. And a lot of people have come from physics or from other kind of hard science backgrounds where they're used to designing a lot of experiments. Um, so it's really a diverse group of people in data science, and I think it's pretty open to people from a range of backgrounds.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you went into music and went to college and didn't really know what you were going to do. 2 weeks out of high school, I was in a Marine Corps boot camp and had
Yeah.
thought no further beyond that
Yep.
than any of it. And then later on, found my way into software development and doing those kinds of things. And like you said, it's the type of career where like your life experience actually means so much, because it's that ability to think and solve problems, not necessarily your ability to to perform a like certain rote set of tasks. Like you can teach a robot to do the rote set of tasks. It's like finding out how to do that correctly that tells the story that you want or gets the outcome that you want. That's important.
Absolutely.
Okay. So now that you've been a data scientist for a while now, like what kind of skills do you consider to be like essential for a data scientist?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the key things is curiosity, that you need to be comfortable with an open-ended, self-directed kind of a problem. It's very different from other kinds of work, maybe where somebody gives you a spec and says, build this, and you're just responsible for the craftsmanship of carrying out that design explicitly. With data science, you don't really know where the path is going to lead. If they knew, they wouldn't have needed a data scientist. They could have just written the rules themselves, right? And so it might be that the data just falls in place and opens up before you, and in a couple of days you've got a great answer, or it might be that you're going to have to slog it out for a few weeks or months until the data tells you what you need to know. Um, and so you have to have that creativity and that willingness to step into the unknown, I think, is an important attribute. If you really need a lot of predictability in your job, it's probably not a good fit. Um, Another, I think, key building block is some understanding of probability and statistics. A lot of what we're going to come up with as an answer is not a yes or no answer, but it's there's a 70% chance, or there's a 95% chance, or whatever. You think about the election forecast that people came up with. It wasn't necessarily yes or no. It was a range of probabilities, but you knew which was more likely. Or if you watch on the sports teams, the advanced analytics where they show you the win probability and it goes up and down over the course of the game. That's really the kinds of things that we're dealing with in data science. And so you need to feel comfortable talking in probabilistic terms, understanding things like p-values um, and certain statistical terms that you need to understand and be able to communicate to the business. And then the last thing I would say is that you need to be enjoy being a fast learner, that this is a field that changes really, really fast. And so, the state-of-the-art thing that you're learning today is very likely going to be obsolete in a few years. And so you have to enjoy that kind of a pace of learning, and not feel that your code that you're writing today is so precious, because it's going to be it's going to be old news very, very fast in this field. And so I think that's an important characteristic of somebody who's going to excel as a data scientist.
Okay, so just kind of come back around, sum that up. You need to be curious.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be self-directed. You need to have like I said, a pretty solid understanding of statistics and probability, and for that to go. And then along with that, curiosity that's that always learning, always like adding new technologies to your belt, always doing that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So sort of follow up on that, like, because you do generally have to start in a technology stack and you do have to work from that. Like, what currently would you say are like must-have technologies that if you were to rock up tomorrow at Lovevery and be like, I want to be a data scientist, what do you really need? Like, if it's on your resume, what do you need to know?
Yeah. Well, first you need to know data manipulation. So probably SQL would be a prerequisite for almost any data science job. Also, depending on the environment, some kind of NoSQL experience working with data. You know, for me, I use Neo4j a lot, and so Cypher would be something that I would look for in our environment at Lovevery. That would be a big plus for somebody to have. Um, and then we do a lot also with pandas. In Python, it's a data manipulation package that we use a lot in Python, or Spark if you're using Spark either with Python or Scala or R. But a good facility with querying data and munging it together and reshaping it, those are a really important skill set for a data scientist. And then in order to manipulate our algorithms, we mostly use either Python or R. Those are the two main programming languages that I would expect to see on a data science resume, and feeling comfortable with those languages. And then within those languages, there's specific machine learning libraries that that are going to help you along the way. And so from a Python environment, there's a package called scikit-learn that's used a lot, and it's a great place to get started for a data scientist. There's also things like PyTorch and TensorFlow that are used for deep learning. And so for some of the more complicated problems, I would start with scikit-learn and then move on to TensorFlow or PyTorch. Another thing that would be helpful if you're working with graphs is understanding the graph data science library from Neo4j, or Neptune just announced Neptune machine learning on the AWS platform. So having some skills with those types of libraries would be helpful. And then the last thing I would say is some ability with data visualization. And there's a lot of different data visualization tools out there, Tableau, Power BI, Looker, etc. I would say having at least some facility with one of those tools, or the ability to make your own charts and graphs through Python and R. With some sense about how you want to lay out the information, because a lot of what we need to do is communicate results, and so the ability to make those charts is really helpful.
Okay. Yeah, that's so I said, let's try to narrow that down again. Is basically that facility to manipulate data. Let's say Python, R. Get it out of a data store, whether that's a SQL data store or a NoSQL data store, and then go ahead and work with it through machine learning, or run certain kind of algorithms, clean it up, do your stuff, and scikit-learn, TensorFlow, and then like I said, come back around to visualization. Either be able to use like out of the box visualization tools, or create your own data visualizations, like in Python or JavaScript or whatever.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, that's that's one of my favorite things to do. I really like to make maps, and I like to make like things that tell a story that way, and that kind of stuff is a lot of fun for me. And I tell people all the time, like if you can take your data, show it to someone in something real quick, and they can get it, it tells a lot. It's the whole picture's worth 1,000 words deal.
Absolutely. I mean, I think data storyteller is a great name for what a data scientist really does, right? You're trying to help that data speak to the audience so that they can make better decisions.
All right. So, let's say this probably like overlaps with with what we just said, the necessary technologies or whatever. But so, if tomorrow somebody rocked up at Lovevery with their resume in hand, what are you going to look for on that resume? That you get a pile of 100 resumes and you're flipping through them. What words are you going to see? What things are you going to look at that automatically you're going to be like, all right, I'll spend the 5 minutes to read this resume, versus it goes in the no thank you pile.
Sure. Well, I think it depends on the need on my team, and I think data science is a broad umbrella, but there's a lot of subspecialties and niches within data science that I would probably be looking to fill, whether that's somebody who has experience with natural language processing and is really current on the latest trends in that field, which has just exploded in the last year, or maybe somebody who's really good with graph data science, graph analytics, maybe somebody who is really good with time series forecasting, and they've got a lot of, they've been predicting the stock market or whatever, they've got experience in that realm. So there's probably different types of data science experience that might be relevant to different roles and positions. And so I would be looking, the thing that turns me off from a data scientist is the data scientist who claims to know everything about data science. That's the charlatan that you probably want to avoid. And so, and that's really, when you think about it, a data scientist is using algorithms that probably most other people in the company don't understand completely. And so the foundational thing that they have to have is trust. They have to be ethical and trustworthy and willing to admit when they've made a mistake. They have to be very transparent and willing to admit that, you know what, I don't really know about that area, and understand what they don't know and be willing to be vulnerable and share that as well, because really people have to take your word. They're not going to be able to deconstruct your algorithm and nitpick every little thing that you've done. They won't understand it, and so they're taking your word for it. And so your credibility is your calling card. And if that doesn't get established quickly, and if it gets questioned over time, then your influence within the organization is really going to diminish. And I think that comes through even on a resume to some extent, especially if the interview doesn't bear out the claims on the resume. So I think it's very important that you are not underselling yourself at all, because everybody is growing, everybody has imposter syndrome, and the fact that somebody has claiming 15, 20 years of experience as a data scientist, what they were doing 20 years ago is nothing at all like what you're doing today. And so the fact that you started doing this, a shorter time ago, doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to be able to do it very, very well. So don't undersell yourself, but you also have to just keep in mind that you have to be very credible and very upfront and honest about exactly the limits of what you really know.
Right. Okay. So yeah, that whole, like I said, the credibility thing is huge, because what you're doing is providing information that the company is making, decisions and judgments on. So I mean, it's not only the fact that, like, you keep your job and your piece of it, but you could, quite possibly be like, you could run a company into the ground. You could be detrimental to a huge group of people, and that kind of like ethical decision making is very important.
Yeah.
I mean, we hear about now, especially with machine learning and AI, all of these ethical like quandaries, all of
Mm-hmm.
the stuff about representation, and all of these different things about AI that are AI machine learning that are so huge. So that makes a ton of sense. So, let's say someone like myself, like I'm a software person, software developer. I enjoy data, but like it's not a major portion of my job. I like making tools and playing with things. Like if I was going to go ahead and try to make a shift over into like a data science role, either engineering or scientist, what kinds of projects or things could I work on that would um, show well for like employment search, and to like just be very beneficial to learn more?
Absolutely. Well, when we are looking for a data scientist, a lot of times we have in our mind this unicorn person who is an awesome business analyst and who also is a um, statistician, machine learning person, and also awesome at software development, right? I mean, we kind of have this picture. And if you're coming from a software development background, then just be aware that you're already checking a big portion of that box, right? So you've got strengths that maybe somebody who was a math major like me doesn't have necessarily. And so keep that in mind and recognize those strengths that you already have. Um, and my path was kind of coming from that adjacent space of data engineering. And so if you're at work and you have the opportunity to collaborate with the data scientists from the data engineering perspective and understanding, okay, well, what are the pieces of data that you need? We talk about feature engineering in data science, which is like making up new pieces of data that can feed into the model by aggregating and smashing together different other pieces of data. So if you can get into that data engineering spot where you can ask the data scientist, okay, why are you asking me for this? How is it helping your model? Understanding how often they're retraining the model, understanding all the different inputs that go into it. That's going to be a really helpful adjacent space that could then transition into the machine learning data science kind of role. The other really, really crucial adjacent space would be what we sometimes call ML ops, which is, okay, great. As a data scientist, I've made this wonderful model and it makes great predictions. Now, what do I do with it? And so understanding how to deploy that model into a production environment where it interacts with all the rest of the ecosystem. A lot of data scientists, including me, I'm not super awesome at Git. And, just understanding how to deploy a model, how to monitor it so that because often these models kind of degrade over time. It gives you a good picture today, but then the world changes and in 6 months it's not really predicting as accurately. So if you're in that ML ops role where you're helping to monitor the accuracy of that model, having those discussions with the data scientists about, well, when would we retrain this, when would we decide that this model needs to be thrown out and start with a new one, that's definitely a space that's, I think, accessible to a software engineer that could transition you into the machine learning role. So those are some things that you could do at work potentially. But if you're looking for things to do on the side, there are so many great data sets that are out there. And one interesting place to go is a website called Kaggle. And they sponsor these competitions all the time. And
I get the emails every week.
yeah. So that's a fun way to just to learn what's out there, and you don't have to win the contest. You just you gain a lot by experience there. And if I was looking at somebody who was transitioning into data science and they could show me some Kaggle competitions and that they had thought through the question in a thoughtful way, in a machine learning data science kind of a way, that would give me confidence that they had the kind of skills I was probably looking for.
Okay. So that's the kind of stuff that I know a lot of people, especially the people I deal with. That's the kind of things they're looking for. Is like, how do I transition into a job? What kind of skills do I need to learn? And
Mm-hmm.
like you said, that because machine learning and data science is such a big thing right now, it's such a buzzword and such a thing that like you said, you can graduate with a degree, you can do whatever, but if you can rock up and you have proof, hey, I've done this, I've put this together, I've participated in these competitions, this is like a proof of my thought process and ability, that's the kind of thing that's pretty big.
Yep, absolutely. I would think if you were looking for Udacity or a different Udemy course or something, I think starting with a basic statistics class would be a good, or just picking up a book, that would be a good background reading to do to get you comfortable. But this stuff used to be so much harder than it is now. It just gets easier all the time, and more things are available just off the shelf to pick up and use. I was doing some topic extraction from a body of text recently. And I was just amazed at how easy it is. I mean, the brilliant people who have open sourced these models for the community to use. And so now I don't have to understand the nth degree of how you trained this. I can just use a few lines of code and use it. And I want to be responsible and understand it to the best of my ability, but I don't have to have that PhD in machine learning to be able to pick this up off the shelf and use it. It's become so much easier.
Right. Well, do you have any closing thoughts on this? You know, on the journey from, you know, music student to data scientist.
Well, I do think that diversity within the data science community is really important. As we talked about earlier, how your life experiences contribute to your ability as a data scientist. And so I'm really happy to see
All that, yeah.
yeah, I'm really happy to see people stepping into this career from different angles and using different tools. You know, it's only going to grow in importance, and I think the skill set of being able to apply data science is going to be relevant in many, many roles across organizations, whether you're the data scientist, whether you're the manager, whether you're, you know, in any position that you're in. The ability to consume this information, I think, is going to really be a differentiator. So even if you think, maybe I don't want to be a data scientist, it's still worth your time to understand this process and understand these tools, because it's going to have a bigger and bigger influence on our world in so many ways. And so just to be an informed citizen, I think it's got a lot of value, but it's a really fun job. And I'd be happy to, you know, people reach out on LinkedIn or Twitter, answer more questions about it, because it is, I think, I found it a very satisfying career path.
And on Twitter, you are at nsmithpiano.
That's right, nsmith_piano.
All right, awesome. Well, Nathan, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate all that. I hope it's okay there in Kansas City. It's definitely okay here in Los Terrenos.
It looks beautiful.
Well, thank you very much.